There is a silence that is not empty, it is a presence, a weight in a room you thought was vacant. You feel it in the sharp intake of breath before a difficult conversation, in the quiet desperation of a perfectionist at 3 a.m., in the hollow echo of a compliment that cannot land. This is not the silence of absence, but of a forgotten occupant, deep within the architecture of the self, in a room where the light has grown dim. A child waits. They are the keeper of original hurts and untamed wonders, and the life you lead now, its frantic pursuits, its unexplained sorrows, its hunger for a love that feels like home, is often just a long, reverberating echo of their unheard whisper. It begins not with a memory, but with a reaction, a feeling that arrives fully formed, with a velocity and a weight that tilts the world. A colleague's offhand comment lands not as a simple statement, but as a deep, personal indictment, the silence of an unreturned text message spirals not into mild concern, but into a cavern of abandonment. There is a familiar ache in these moments, an old ghost wearing the clothes of a modern problem. This is the echo. The neglected inner child does not speak in the complex language of the adult. It communicates in the primal dialect of sensation, a knot in the stomach, constriction in the throat, a sudden, inexplicable flush of heat. It is a tremor that originates from a deep, subterranean place, traveling upwards through layers of composure to finally manifest as a storm the conscious mind struggles to comprehend. The adult self hears the crash of the wave, but does not know of the distant earthquake that set it in motion. To live with this is to live in a house with a strange and unpredictable resonance. You are the one who feels the vibration, who hears the faint, unsettling hum when everyone else hears silence, and so you begin to arrange the furniture of your life to dampen the noise. You become a perfectionist because a flawless performance might finally the approving nod you once craved. You become a people pleaser because if you can anticipate and meet everyone's needs, perhaps no one will leave. You fill your days with noise and motion because the stillness is where the whisper becomes a cry. These are not merely personality traits, they are sophisticated defense mechanisms constructed by a brilliant, survival-oriented mind. They are the adult's attempt to solve a problem whose roots are buried in a time before logic, in the emotional soil of childhood. The hunger is for a specific quality of love, unconditional, attuned, and safe. But the child, locked away, believes this love must be earned through doing, through achieving, through becoming what others need you to be. And when the external validation arrives, the promotion, the compliment, the new relationship, there is a brief, bright flare of satisfaction, but it never seems to warm the deepest part of the self. It is like lighting a match in a vast, cold cavern. The light is real, but it cannot hold back the overwhelming dark. The praise slides away, unable to stick, because the foundational sense of being inherently enough was never built. The child within does not understand the adult's achievements. It only understands presence, attention, and feeling felt. This is the central paradox. The very strategies devised to secure safety and love, the striving, the hustling, the charming, only serve to reinforce the core wound of neglect. Each time you bypass your own need for rest to meet a deadline, you are telling that child your exhaustion does not matter. Each time you silence your own opinion to keep the peace, you whisper, your voice is not important. The adult world rewards the output while the inner world starves from a lack of input. The echo is not a ghost trying to haunt you, it is a prisoner trying to get your attention. The reactions that seem so disproportionate are, in fact, perfectly proportionate to the original unseen injury. A small rejection in the present does not cause a small wound. It presses against the bruise of a foundational rejection. The criticism is not just about the work, it is a confirmation of a deeply held childhood belief that you are flawed and that to be flawed is to be unlovable. The emotional system is not overreacting, it is faithfully reenacting an old, unresolved script, playing out the same drama with a new cast of characters. So the days are spent managing this invisible current, the hypervigilance, the scanning of every room for subtle shifts in mood, the profound sensitivity to perceived criticism. The way a single word can unravel a week of confidence, the desperate need for control. Over the environment, over schedules, over emotions, because the internal world feels so perilously uncontrollable. It is an exhausting performance, a play where you are the actor, the director, and the stage manager, all for an audience of one, a child who longed. The ghost stopped watching the stage and now only stares back from the darkness of the wings. Neglect is not always an empty space. Often it is a space filled with the wrong things. It is not the silence, but the constant noise that leaves no room for a child's own sounds. It is not the absence of rules, but the presence of rules that are unpredictable, shifting like sand underfoot. The architecture of the inner child's chamber is built not in a single catastrophic collapse, but brick by invisible brick, through the slow and steady weathering of unmet needs. The blueprint is drawn in the language of adaptation. A child does not have the capacity to question their environment. Their survival depends on adapting to it. When a feeling arises, sadness, fear, a spark of wild joy, it is presented to the world, a small, fragile offering. The response or lack thereof becomes the foundational lesson. If tears are met with annoyance or dismissal, the lesson is that vulnerability is a burden. If anger is met with punishment or fear, the lesson is that this powerful energy is dangerous and must be sealed away. If curiosity is met with distraction or impatience, the lesson is that the world is not to be explored but endured. This is how the false self begins to form. It is a brilliant, necessary construction, a suit of armor forged in a furnace of perceived necessity. The child looks at the caregivers and asks, not consciously but with the entirety of their being, who do I need to be for you? To love me, to keep me safe. The answer becomes their identity. The boisterous child learns to be quiet. The sensitive child learns to be tough. The inquisitive child learns to stop asking questions. They bury the authentic self, the one with needs and moods and messy emotions, because that self seems to be the obstacle to connection. The false self is the key they craft to fit the lock of their world. The materials for this construction are the chronic, subtle failures of attunement. It is the parent who buys every toy but never gets on the floor to play. It is the parent who provides a spotless home and nutritious meals, but cannot tolerate a child's loud, chaotic feelings. It is the parent who brags about achievements but is absent for the quiet, ordinary moments of defeat. The child receives a confusing double message. I am loved, and yet my essence is not welcome here. This is the core of the wound, not a lack of care, but a lack of recognition. The child feels like a guest in their own home, performing gratitude for a hospitality that never quite feels like belonging. There is a specific loneliness to this kind of upbringing. It is a loneliness that can exist in a crowded family photo. From the outside, everything may look intact, even ideal. But inside the child, a schism is forming. One part continues to live, to interact, to perform. The other part, the true self, retreats. It goes deep inside into the hidden room, and it sits there. It stops growing. It is frozen at the age where the disconnection became too profound to bear. This is not a choice. It is a biological and psychological imperative. When the environment is not safe for the whole self, the self divides to survive. The original needs do not vanish, they are simply orphaned. The need for comfort becomes a frantic search for security in adult relationships, a hunger so vast it can scare potential partners away. The need for validation becomes an insatiable appetite for praise, a hollow victory that never fills the emptiness. The need for playful, unstructured joy becomes a secret life of compulsive, often destructive escapism. The adult is left chasing the ghosts of childhood needs, trying to get them met in a world that operates on an adult scale with adult currencies. They are trying to buy bread with stones. And so the architecture stands. The walls are high, made of I'm fine, and it doesn't matter. The foundation is the unspoken family rule. Don't feel, don't need, don't speak. The furniture is arranged for utility, not for comfort. There are no soft places. Windows are shuttered because the world outside has proven to be unreliable. This inner chamber, built to protect a vulnerable heart, becomes its prison. The child within is Not hiding from the world, it is waiting. It is waiting for the one person who can finally turn the key, who can enter without judgment, and who can sit in the quiet and finally listen. That person, of course, is the adult who now holds the blueprint. The past is not a story you remember. It is a physiology you inhabit. The body keeps a ledger of every unheld hand, every unheard cry, every smile that was met with a turned back. This ledger is written not in words, but in neural pathways and hormonal cascades. In the very tension of the muscles, the neglected child is not a psychological abstraction, it is a living, breathing pattern within the nervous system, a recording of an old emergency that never quite ended. The brain of a child is a universe under construction, its galaxies of neurons forming trillions of connections in response to experience. The most crucial experiences are relational, a caregiver's calm, attuned presence signals to the developing brain. The world is safe, you are safe. This allows the higher brain, the prefrontal cortex, to slowly learn its role as a wise leader, regulating the primal alarm system of the lower brain, the amygdala. But when a child's distress is consistently met with absence, dismissal, or anger, the message is different. The brain learns the world is unreliable, you are alone. In your distress, the amygdala, the sentinel of threat, is conditioned to be hyper vigilant. It learns to see danger everywhere. This is the frozen moment. It is not a memory one can recall and narrate. It is an implicit memory, a memory of feeling, of sensation, of a physiological state. It has no context, no timestamp. It is pure experience. When an adult feels a sudden, overwhelming wave of shame from a minor mistake, it is not the adult reacting. It is the implicit memory of a child who once felt that their very existence was a mistake. The amygdala sounds the same alarm it did decades ago, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline, hijacking the prefrontal cortex. Reason is offline. The body is back there in the original moment of helplessness. The emotional system becomes a faulty smoke detector, screeching at the scent of toast. A raised eyebrow in a meeting becomes a precursor to annihilation. A partner's quiet mood becomes the terrifying prelude to abandonment. The body responds with the same ancient survival-level intensity: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. The heart hammers, the breath shallows, the stomach clenches. The adult mind, trying to catch up, looks for a rational cause in the present. It finds one and clings to it, blaming the boss, the partner, the traffic, but the cause is a ghost, a neural ghost from a time when the threat was real and the need for a protector was a matter of life and death. This hyper-aroused state is only one side of the coin. For some, the adaptation to neglect is not a heightened alarm, but a profound shutdown. The nervous system, overwhelmed by a world it cannot escape, learns to dissociate. It retreats inward. This is the freeze response, a state of numbness, of disconnection from the body and its feelings. It is not a lack of feeling, but a protective containment of feeling that is too vast to process. The body goes quiet, the world seems distant, and a glass wall descends between the self and life. It is a biological surrender, a way to survive the unsurvivable. By leaving the scene of the crime, these patterns carve deep riverbeds in the brain. They become the default routes for neural traffic. The thought, I might fail, effortlessly slides into the feeling failure, which triggers the physiological state of collapse. It happens in a millisecond, below the level of conscious thought. This is why willpower and positive thinking are often powerless against these tides. You are not fighting a thought, you are fighting a deeply ingrained biological protocol, a survival strategy that was encoded when the brain was at its most plastic and vulnerable. The neglected inner child, then, is a set of these frozen physiological and emotional states. It is a cluster of unmet needs that still pulse with the raw, urgent energy of childhood. It is a nervous system that never received the consistent, soothing input required to learn how to self-soothe. The longing for a safe embrace, the flinch at a sudden noise, the inability to cry, the constant hum of anxiety. These are not character flaws, they are the living archaeology of a childhood world, the biological echoes. Time when love was a language spoken too quietly or not spoken at all. The body remembers what the mind has tried to forget. There is a strange and powerful loyalty we hold to our own suffering. It feels like a fundamental truth, a core component of the self, to release the old pain, even the pain that cripples, can feel like a betrayal of the past, of the family system, and of the child who learned to survive by building walls. This loyalty is the silent guardian at the door of the inner chamber, a sentry who mistakes healing for surrender and compassion for a dangerous weakness. The logic is ancient, forged in the fire of early survival. The child's mind reasons in simple, absolute terms. This environment, with all its pain, is what I know. To question it is to risk losing the fragile connections I have. Therefore, this pain must be necessary. It must be mine to carry. The coping strategies, the hypervigilance, the perfectionism, the people-pleasing become sacred relics. They are the tools that kept the child safe, or at least safe enough. To put them down now feels like disarming in the middle of a war, even if the battlefield is only a memory. This loyalty often dresses itself as identity. I am just a warrior. I have a thick skin. I'm very independent. These statements are not merely descriptions, they are declarations of allegiance to a way of being that was born from necessity, to consider a life without. The constant undercurrent of anxiety feels like erasing a part of the self. The pain becomes a familiar companion, its absence a terrifying void. Who would you be without? Your struggles, the question itself, can induce a kind of existential panic. The known hell is preferred to the unknown heaven. There is a deeper, more poignant layer to this allegiance, a loyalty to the caregivers themselves. To acknowledge the full extent of the neglect feels like an accusation. A part of the self rushes to their defense. They did their best, they provided for me. It wasn't that bad. This is the child's voice, the one that could not afford to see its parents as flawed. For a child's survival depends on their caregivers being seen as good and capable. To fully feel the original grief and anger would shatter that necessary illusion. So the adult remains tethered to a diluted version of the past, protecting the ghosts of those who could not fully protect them. This creates a profound inner conflict. One part, the functional adult, longs for freedom, for peace, for lightness. It reads the books, seeks the therapies, yearns for change. But the other part, the loyal child soldier, stands firm. It whispers saboteurs' truths. You're being self-indulgent. This is who you are. If you let yourself be vulnerable, you will be destroyed. Every step toward healing is met with an internal counterforce, a surge of self-criticism, a sudden fatigue, or the creation of a new crisis. It is not a lack of will, it is a civil war. The resistance manifests as a deep-seated belief that one must handle everything alone. To ask for help, to lean on another, to be truly seen in a moment of need. These acts feel like profound violations of an ancient pact, the pact that says, I will never need anyone that much again. Receiving genuine care can feel unsettling, even insulting. It challenges the entire foundational belief system built around your own unworthiness of such effortless support. The walls, though they cause claustrophobia, also provide a perverse sense of safety. Their very presence defines the self. To turn and face the neglected child is not an act of gentle curiosity for the loyal protector. It is an act of treason. It is the dismantling of a kingdom that was built for survival. The protector sees the pain not as a wound to be healed, but as a vital organ that cannot be removed without causing death. Its resistance is not a flaw in the design. It is the design working perfectly. It is the fierce, misguided love of a part of the self that would rather you be safe in a prison than free in an unknown and terrifying world. Loyalty is to the wound because, for so long, the wound was all you had to prove you existed. The turning point is rarely a thunderclap. It is not a dramatic revelation under a therapist's lamp or a single cathartic breakdown. It is quieter than that. It is a cumulative series of moments where the armor, once a necessity, becomes too heavy to wear. It is the slow dawning that the war may be over, even if the internal sentry still stands at his post. It begins with a whisper of exhaustion, a subtle fracture in the foundation of the False self, a glimpse of something softer behind the fortifications. It happens in the space between stimulus and response. A criticism arrives, and for the first time, the old cascade of shame does not immediately follow. There is a pause. Sliver of silence where a new question can form. Is this truly about me? It happens in the middle of a frantic effort to please, when the hands suddenly still and a tired voice inside asks, what do I need? These questions are the first turning of the key. They are not yet answers, but they are the beginning of an internal dialogue that does not revolve around the expectations of others. This shift is often precipitated by a moment of poignant recognition. It is seeing a child in a park crying freely in their parents' arms and being struck by a grief that has no name. It is the visceral understanding that such a simple, uncomplicated comfort was absent. It is hearing a story from a friend about their own childhood and feeling a resonance so deep it feels like a physical ache. It is in these moments that the neglected child, long silenced, finds a way to send a signal flare into the adult consciousness. The emotion that surfaces is not self-pity. It is compassion felt for the first time for the one who carries the wound. The key turns through the body before it turns in the mind. It is the conscious decision to take a full, deep breath when the chest wants to constrict. It is the act of placing a hand over a heart that is hammering with ancient fear, a simple, physical gesture of comfort. It is the choice to rest when every ingrained habit screams to push through. These are not grand gestures of healing. They are small, quiet acts of rebellion against the internal regime of neglect. They are the adult self beginning to provide the elemental care the child's self was denied. This is not a bypass of the pain, it is an invitation. It is the adult finally approaching the door of the inner chamber, not as a stranger, but as a potential guardian. The initial contact is often met with silence or a surge of resistance. The child within does not trust this new attention. It has been fooled before by moments of false hope. The key turns slowly with immense patience. It is the commitment to sit outside the door day after day and simply announce your presence. I am here, I am not leaving, you do not have to come out, you do not have to say anything, but I am here. The realization is this: the neglected inner child is not a problem to be solved, but a part of the self to be integrated. The goal is not to evict the pain, but to welcome the one who holds it. This turning point is the moment the adult understands that they are no longer the helpless child in the story. They have become the one with the resources, the strength, the capacity to offer safety. The power dynamic has shifted. The child is the one who is hurting. The adult is the one who can hold the space for the hurt. The key is not a tool for forcing a lock, but for ending a solitary confinement that has lasted for decades. It is the beginning of listening not to the content of the old stories, but to the feeling beneath them. When the thought arises, I am unlovable, the new response is not to argue with it, but to turn toward the feeling of unlovability itself, to feel its texture, its weight, its location in the body, to acknowledge it with a simple, this is the old pain. This is the child's fear. This is how the internal exile ends, not with a battle, but with a return, not with a cure, but with a conversation that was waiting a lifetime to begin. Integration is not an arrival at a sun-drenched meadow where pain is no longer known. It is the slow, deliberate process of bringing the exiled child home from the cold. It is the adult building an extension onto the old, cramped architecture of the self, creating a space where all parts are finally permitted to exist. It is not about becoming someone new, but about becoming whole, reuniting the caretaker with the one who needed care, the protector with the one who needed protection. This work is called reparenting, but it is not an act of regression. It is an act of profound maturation. It is the adult self learning to provide for the inner child what the original parents could not. It begins with the most basic provisions: consistency, attention, and validation. It looks like keeping promises to oneself, no matter how small. I said I would rest, and now I will rest. I said I would not work through lunch, and I will not. These are not items on a productivity list. They are sacred vows that rebuild trust from the Inside out, each kept promise is a brick laid in the foundation of a new, reliable inner world. The language of this integration is one of gentle acknowledgement. When the old anxiety stirs, the response is not to silence it, but to name it. Ah, there is the fear of abandonment. When the urge to perfect arises, the internal dialogue softens. There is the child who believes they must be flawless to be loved. This is not indulging the pain. It is dignifying it with recognition. It is seeing the child not as a problem, but as a messenger pointing toward an unmet need. The need for safety, for rest, for play, for unconditional acceptance. The adult's job is to finally, consciously meet it. Play becomes a serious undertaking, not the competitive or performative play of the adult world, but the unstructured, purposeless play of childhood. It is the feeling of sand between the fingers, the aimless wandering through a forest, the dancing in the kitchen, to a favorite song for no one's benefit but your own. This is how the frozen moment begins to thaw. Joy and spontaneity are the antidotes to the chronic solemnity of a survival-based life. They are proof that the emergency is over, that it is safe to inhabit the body not as a fortress, but as a vessel for pleasure. Boundaries become acts of love, not walls of separation. The adult learns to say no, not from a place of resentment, but from a place of fierce, compassionate guardianship over the child's depleted energy and fragile spirit. They curate their environments and relationships not to hide from the world, but to create a container safe enough for the true self to finally emerge. The people pleaser falls away not through force, but through the quiet realization that the only approval essential for survival is your own. Wholeness then feels not like a state of constant happiness, but like a resilient inner ecosystem. The adult and the child learn to coexist. The adult provides the strength, the resources, the perspective. The child contributes the vulnerability, the intuition, the capacity for wonder and authentic feeling. The storms still come, the old triggers still exist, but they no longer define the entire weather system of the self. There is now an internal sanctuary, a place you can retreat to, where you are both the one being comforted and the one offering the comfort. The echo in the adult room fades not because the child has been silenced, but because the child has been heard. The silence that remains is no longer heavy with absence, but peaceful, full, and finally your own.